This is Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Today on the show, we're going to talk with the Vershire journalist and author Matthew Hongoltz Hetling. He has a new book out about paranormal investigation and what he argues is the collapse of scientific literacy in America. We'll also speak with author Mima Tipper about her new novel for young adults called Cat's Greek Summer. But first, Juneteenth is a celebration marking the end of slavery in the United States. It's a federal holiday, annually celebrated on June 19th. Recently, I spoke with organizers of two local Juneteenth celebrations. Though I should probably admit we spent nearly as much time talking about Juneteenth as we did debating the merits of the Red Sox versus the Yankees. But in the spirit of unity and togetherness, I won't repeat that conversation here. Kate Likhite is a recreation specialist with South Burlington's Recreation and Parks Department. She's been closely involved in her city's Juneteenth planning. And Joe Major is the lead organizer of Hartford's Juneteenth celebrations, which they host in partnership with Lebanon, New Hampshire, and Bethel, Vermont. He's also a state senator representing Windsor County, and he's the executive director of the Sports Venue Foundation and treasurer for the town of Hartford. We spoke recently.
It's pretty amazing. This is going to be our fifth Juneteenth celebration. And I'm really excited because it has expanded to other municipalities. We have Lebanon, New Hampshire that joins in with us, and for the first time this year, we will have the town of Bethel that will also. So we are collaborating to have a Juneteenth celebration on Saturday, June 21st, from 2 to 4 at Lyman Point Park and White River Junction, and we'll have speakers and music and face painting and things for the kids. So I'm just really excited for everyone in this community and in those communities of Lebanon and Bethel to join in and learn more about what Juneteenth really is about.
I know that you and Lebanon have long worked together on these celebrations, but it's very cool to see these three towns working together on this.
So Bethel had a Juneteenth celebration last year, which I went to, and they were going to have it this year, and they reached out to us and said that did they want to collaborate, or did we want to collaborate with them? And I was more than happy. I think more the merrier. One of the things, and look, it's no secret that Vermont is one of the whitest states in the union, and so when you say Juneteenth, a lot of people are a little apprehensive. Should I be celebrating Juneteenth? Should this be something that we do collaboratively? And Juneteenth is for everyone, quite frankly. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Juneteenth is actually a celebration of freedom and a freedom for everyone. And now, probably more than ever, we have to celebrate freedom. And I think we have a bunch of speakers that are going to emphasize that more than anything.
I want to hear more about those speakers in just a moment. But first, Kate, can you tell us what's going to be going on in South Burlington this year and your role in the organizing efforts?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am part of the South Burlington Recreation Department and the City of South Burlington together. So the Recreation Department and the library have put together kind of a series of events all throughout June, honestly. Doing Juneteenth-oriented events and programs. So the library, on the library side, they've themed their book groups for the month, their like evening, morning, and cookbook club even around topics relating to Juneteenth and Black culture, as well as inviting poetry author Isaiah Hines, a spoken word and musical tribute by Jolivet Anderson, and the speaker, Reverend Mark Hughes from the Vermont Racial Justice Alliance, all throughout the month. The library events more focus on honoring Black history and promoting awareness. And on the rec side, we're working to support local BIPOC businesses and artists and celebrate contemporary Black culture. So the rec events include a J. Kulu dance and drum workshop, a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, a yoga class with local instructor Hope Elliott, and our main event is our kickoff SB Night Out on Juneteenth itself. And that features BIPOC food vendors, business owners, and organizations with musical performances by local Black artists.
You all are catching on a major national sports trend with the 3-on-3. I feel like it's everywhere these days.
I think it'll be really fun.
And Joe, you had mentioned some speakers that you all will be featuring. Could you tell us about that?
I'm excited to have Vice President of Vermont Law School, Shirley Jefferson, as one of our speakers. Senate Majority Leader Keisha Ram Hinsdale will be one of our speakers. The Reverend Dr. Leon Dunkley from the North Universal Chapel in Woodstock will be one of our speakers. We have some high school kids that will be speaking, and I think it's incredibly important in this unsettled, let's say, time, to make sure that we give our youth some knowledge of history. And I thought it would be no better than to come from youth to do that. So we have some youth from Hartford High School doing that as well. So I'm just incredibly excited about our lineup and the event as a whole.
The teenagers are not just going to be learning, but they're teaching as well.
It's the best thing, at least when I was growing up 150 years ago. I learned best from my peers, and you listen more to your peers. And if they can drop some knowledge on you about things that are going on, both past and present, about Juneteenth, I think it is invaluable.
And I bet a lot of that shared learning is going to be happening in the book groups that you were discussing, Kate, that are going on throughout the month in South Burlington. What's one of the many events that you listed that you personally are most excited about?
I am always excited about our South Burlington Night Out series, our SB Night Out. That's one of our, it's our main event over the summer. And this year it kind of perfectly falls on that Thursday, which is June 19th. So I am really, really excited to actually be able to start off this large event series with this Juneteenth celebration and highlighting contemporary Black culture.
Juneteenth has gained more of a broader cultural understanding and following over the last 5 years or so. Joe, I'm wondering if you could speak to that element of this celebration a bit. How has your thinking as an organizer changed as Juneteenth has gone from something that a lot of white people didn't really know much about to something that is sort of part of our culture and also a local holiday for many now?
So I'm going to give you a little bit of my history. I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, and Buffalo has the longest standing Juneteenth celebration in the United States. And so I remember going to these parades and celebrations as a kid. And so when we decided during COVID, mind you, to put a celebration together, we did it virtually. And we had people, much like we're doing today on Zoom, giving speeches and talking about Juneteenth. And it just grew. And I think really the catalyst of it getting notoriety is becoming a national holiday. People knew about it, but now knowing it was a national holiday and getting the day off on June 19th, I think probably more than anything, was something that really piqued people's curiosity. And so what is Juneteenth? How does it affect people? Because quite frankly, people thought that once the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, that was it, and not having to reach out to all corners of the then United States, that they realized that it wasn't until they reached Galveston, Texas, that it actually did come to fruition and all the slaves were free. So it is a conduit to the 4th of July, I like to think. And its freedom and freedom for all men and women. And we like to, in this time where education is sometimes not promoted, we like to promote this.
Kate, do you feel like there is still a level of education that needs to occur among residents of South Burlington and beyond around what Juneteenth is, what it means, and why it's important for the South Burlington government to be a part of these celebrations?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I didn't grow up in South Burlington. I grew up in Jericho, Vermont, and I genuinely cannot remember a time like during my youth that we talked about Juneteenth. Like either in my community or like with my family even. And you're saying, Joe, like it's for everyone. And I absolutely agree with you because having that like highlight on any community of color. I think that's wonderful. I think in South Burlington as well, we've been throwing more and more, trying to have that like cultural community awareness of like who makes up our community and trying to highlight these various, marginalized and underrepresented communities that are in South Burlington by having like community dinners with thematic food or like dance events with thematic dance, just highlighting these different cultures and communities within our own.
Hmm. Joe, what do you think of what Kate is saying there about Juneteenth providing an opportunity to not just learn about and celebrate Black culture, but to have an even bigger umbrella?
I absolutely agree with that. And it's ironic because um, there is an equity coordinator at Hartford High School who I reached out to see if we could get some student speakers. And one of the student speakers was a bit apprehensive because they were white. And they felt, well, maybe this isn't the right venue for me to express. And it's the exact opposite. It is for all of us. If we all are not free, then none of us are free. And I think that's the important thing that we have to project in not only this holiday, but in these celebrations. It is for all of us. If we truly are going to find equity and equality, then we have to see that whether you're BIPOC or not, that all of us have to be in celebratory mode when it comes to Juneteenth because it is truly it was truly a fight for our freedom. And I will also say this. It's not over. I mean, there's still a struggle. And I think it reminds us of that on many different fronts. And so when we celebrate Juneteenth, it should be celebrating like the 4th of July. It should be celebrating when we celebrate, our veterans. It should be celebrating when we celebrate those things that we hold most dear. And so it is not just a Black holiday. And I want to kind of get past that. I said at a Juneteenth celebration a couple of years ago, which got a little bit of fun. It's probably the whitest Juneteenth celebration in the United States, but it is something that is for all of us. And once we get past, it's just a Black holiday because it's not. Because Martin Luther King isn't. It's a celebration of freedom and freedom for everyone.
Joe Major and Kate Likhite, thank you so much for talking with me today about your upcoming Juneteenth celebrations.
Absolutely. Thank you. And if I didn't say it, one more time, June 21st, Lyman Point Park in White River Junction, Vermont. And we invite everyone. There will be free food.
Hear, hear. Free food.
Free food.
Kate, any other details that we need to mention?
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for doing this interview. I'll do the same thing June 19th, 5 to 8 p.m. at Veterans Memorial Park in South Burlington. That's 1000 Dorset Street, South Burlington. And we'll hope to see you there.
State Senator Joe Major is the lead organizer of Hartford's Juneteenth celebrations, which are put on in partnership with Bethel and Lebanon, New Hampshire. And Kate Likhite is a recreation specialist with South Burlington's Recreation and Parks Department. There are other communities in our region hosting Juneteenth events, including Burlington. Its fifth annual Juneteenth celebration will be this Saturday from 2 to 10 p.m. on Church Street and in City Hall Park. Coming up on Vermont Edition, the story of a quirky collection of people in New Hampshire searching for scientific evidence of paranormal activity. That's in just a minute. Stay with us.
Thanks for listening to Vermont Edition, where support comes from Vital, Vermont information technology leaders. Did you know that 98.9% of Vermonters share health data with their providers through the nonprofit Vital to support better care? Learn more at vitl.net/sharing.
Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Picture a business plaza in a small town in the New Hampshire Seacoast region. There, you'll find the offices of a nonprofit called the Kit Research Initiative. Their research centers on one thing: finding scientific evidence of paranormal activity. The work of its founder, Andy Kit, has attracted the attention of psychics, witches, ghost hunters, cryptozoologists, and other believers in the paranormal from all across New England and the world. In his new book, which came out this May, Versher journalist and author Matthew Hongoltz-Hetling tells Andy Kit's rather unique story. Matt also draws a broader conclusion about the ties between pseudoscience and the eroding trust in institutions like government and media. His book is called The Ghost Lab: How Bigfoot Hunters, Mediums, and Alien Enthusiasts Are Wrecking Science. He's also the author of two other books: If It Sounds Like a Quack, A Journey to the Fringes of American Medicine, and A Libertarian Walks Into a Bear. He was a finalist for a Pulitzer Prize in local reporting in 2012, and he's also a George Polk Award winner. We spoke recently. The conversation started with Matt describing the Kit Research Initiative in New Hampshire.
Yeah, this is just sort of like the most interesting place you could imagine. So if you could just sort of like think about a place where under one roof you have the people running the show, who include a ghost hunter, a psychic medium, a Bigfoot hunter who also happens to be an alien abductee, and a paralegal who is trying to find answers for the voices that she hears in her head, and an empath who can sense the feelings of others. So yes, it's this very sort of like a eclectic collective group of people who came together to sort of take up the shared noble mission. They had this stated goal of finding the science behind these fields that they were so passionate about and that they were so interested in. And so the Kit Research Initiative was sort of like the outcome of their efforts to do that. They founded this center, and they set about trying to find evidence for the things that they had personally experienced and seen.
Wow. And this was founded by a man named Andy Kit. How did you first learn about him?
I first learned about him just because I was sort of looking far and wide throughout the landscape of the paranormal enthusiast community. And I was sort of looking for those ideal subjects who could sort of carry the weight of the themes that I was interested in exploring as a journalist. And Andy was sort of like a slam dunk. Like, I considered like a state legislator who's also a Wiccan. I considered a woman who ran a haunted crepe restaurant.
Wait. A haunted crepe restaurant?
Well, yeah, the crepes were fine. The restaurant was haunted. Let me clarify, Michaela. What distinguished Andy for me was that Andy had a background in scientific inquiry. And this was very appealing because I wanted to sort of see what would happen when these two worlds that we normally think of as being so separate, like science and the supernatural, right? They couldn't be more opposite from one another. So what would happen when a competent person tried to bridge that gap? And that was what led me to Andy.
So you said that they were in search of scientific evidence of these beliefs. Did they find any?
They found a lot of what they would consider to be evidence. The majority of the evidence that they found fell into sort of like the realm of personal experience. They went out to places and put themselves into situations where they might be able to experience, say, a UFO or a spirit trying to communicate with them, or a spirit orb, all those sorts of things. And they came back absolutely convinced that these phenomena were real. They found only sort of like reinforcement for their presuppositions.
So you use this story to illustrate a larger point that you make in this book, that there has been this decline in scientific literacy in the United States. New Hampshire, within the United States, you point out, is rather unique. I read an interview that you did with New York Magazine where you said that New Hampshire has always been on the leading edge of national distrust. And that distrust, you argue, is related to this decline in scientific literacy and the rise in beliefs in some of these paranormal activities that we're discussing today and pseudoscience. What's going on in New Hampshire?
Well, New Hampshire has this really sort of unique history, right? Like the other New England states, it has a deeper history than much of the rest of the country. It shares that with Vermont, but New Hampshire is sort of like that reverence and connection to history runs even deeper because they've got so many sort of historical sites related to the founding of the country. So the spirits of the founding fathers are very much alive in New Hampshire in a way that they're not even in the rest of New England. Um, they also have this very sort of like streak of independence, right? I think every state you can find people who pride themselves on being independently minded, but New Hampshire is the only one that's sort of like codified that into its state motto and into so few places with, say, zoning laws or uh, a lack of retail sales or restrictions on seatbelt use. So the individual experience is really uniquely prized in New Hampshire. And that sort of emphasis on the individual sort of carries with it, on the reverse side of that coin, a distrust of the collective, right? Or a lack of reverence for the collective, including institutions and including our government. And so, right now, as we're all sort of looking out at the political landscape, we're seeing a lot of impacts of national distrust in our institutions. And in New Hampshire, they've sort of been through this on a smaller scale a little bit earlier than the rest of the country. And so that was one of the things that drew me to study them.
I do feel like, though, that there has been this growing distrust in government, but now government is changing from within. I'm thinking, of course, of our health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has long purported some anti-vaccination beliefs. There's the rise of the Make America Healthy Again movement. Do you see connections between those leaders, that movement, and what you reported on in the Ghost Lab?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I may not like what's going on in Washington, but I recognize that it's essentially the outcome of a voting population that didn't have any faith in those institutions. They didn't trust those institutions to do right by the American public. And so we've elected some disruptors of government systems and institutional systems. And those disruptors are sort of avatars of this feeling of national distrust. The paranormal beliefs that I document are very much a part and parcel of the dynamic that gives rise to the leadership that we've elected on the federal level.
And Matt, one of the things that I have always admired about your writing is that you find a way to balance your natural wit and humor and levity, and you clearly have a very discerning eye, especially when it comes to some of these topics that for some could be really easy to laugh off, but you also treat them with like care and seriousness, and really try to tell people's stories. I mean, the people that you speak to at the KIT Research Initiative, they care deeply about this work. Was there tension there for you between figuring out a way to balance those two feelings of the seriousness with which you need to approach your subject, and then also a bit of humor and levity?
Yeah, Michaela, I did a lot of sort of heavy lifting early on in the process to try to diffuse that natural tension. Thank you so much, by the way, for saying those nice things about my book. I sort of had this open approach when I came in, that I was not there to prove or disprove the existence of spirits. And also this sort of recognition that comes from a place of humility that we're all sort of out there in some ways. Humans, I don't think, are really built to be super rational creatures, right? We are built to have a belief in supernatural events. And, over the last 100 years or so, that belief has been dominated by institutional religious organizations, right? And now we're sort of shifting to something different that's more individual based. But our propensity to believe in things that science can't find an answer for is very much a feature, not a bug of the human animal. And so when I'm out there, in some cases, sort of poking fun at some of these beliefs, it's with the knowledge that these beliefs that they have are no more outlandish than the beliefs that are sort of the dogma of our religious structures, right? That are our well-established religions. And so I wanted to approach those paranormal beliefs that are more individual based with the same level of respect that I would accord someone with religious beliefs. These people believe what they believe very deeply. They're not criminals. They're not politicians who have held themselves up for public inspection. They were just people with sort of like a very different way of looking at the world. And so I wanted to come into it with that in mind.
Well, I'm glad you brought up religion, because one thing that I was thinking about with this book is that, you listed all these people who are working together at the KIT Research Initiative in New Hampshire, and they are coming from all sorts of different backgrounds, and they all believe in kind of different sounding things. There's a common thread about, some sort of a paranormal activity, something that can't be explained by modern Western scientific beliefs, but it's pretty disparate. And then you think of religion, and you think of a big group of people who are all united behind the same core beliefs and values. Do you feel like you were able to uncover any set of shared beliefs or other things that kind of brought these folks together?
Distinction between that you just described between a religious code that brings people together because it represents a shared collective idea, and the fragmented nature of the paranormal landscape is really what distinguishes it and what makes it sort of like a unique force in our society. The paranormal enthusiasts, the believers, they're going very much based on individual experience, and that sort of necessarily carries with it a fragmented set of beliefs that does not necessarily join up into one shared coda. The one thing that unites them, I suppose, is more cultural. It's that they sort of accept each other's beliefs as true, even when those beliefs directly contradict other beliefs that they also hold as true. And that's sort of really critical to understanding the movement, because it suggests that rather than looking at the universe through scientific lenses, which would dictate a shared set of facts, or through a church lens, which dictates a shared set of beliefs, they are united by the individuality of those beliefs, and that has the power to radically reshape society. And a lot of people believe that there will be a sort of emerging religion, major religion coming out of this community that will someday soon be the dominant religion in America.
Wow, really?
Yeah, they describe themselves as spiritual but not religious. That's sort of like the bucket that Pew will sort them into when they're out there tracking it. And right now they comprise about 22% of Americans. These are folks who think that there's something more out there than we can see, but they don't believe what they've been told by religious leaders or government leaders about what it is that's out there. And so you can sort of see how that sets the stage for institutional distrust.
I wonder if you do think, though, that there is any sort of, I don't know, safe space for belief in things that have not yet been proven. Because I think there's a lot of Americans out there who might not go so far as to say, I believe that somebody's been abducted by an alien and returned to Earth, but would say, my grandfather died and I sense something about their presence, or something eerie occurred after my pet died, and I feel a connection to them and it can't be explained by science. Do those feelings also connect to this slippery slope towards decline in governmental institutional trust that you're describing in the rest of the book?
That's a very common and almost universal experience. I feel the presence of somebody who recently passed, right? Somebody that I love, that I'm in the throes of grief about. And I think what's changed is that we used to be able to turn to a religious leader or a therapist to sort of sort through that experience. Or rather, that's been sort of like the dominant way to deal with those sorts of experiences. And those folks in those positions, in those spheres, could sort of hold our hand and help us through those experiences and make meaning out of them in a way that was satisfying and resonant. But there's this sort of increasing number of folks who are not finding those answers that they're getting from a therapist or from a religious leader to be satisfying to them. And so they're off sort of searching for their own truths. And what the experts and leaders within the paranormal community provide is something that's more satisfying. That yes, the spirit of your grandfather is right beside you. That can bring a lot of people a great deal of comfort.
What do you think leaders of institutions should do to accommodate some of these folks who don't believe in them and their work?
Yeah, this is going to sound really strange, Michaela, but I really think that they need to find spaces within institutions for these worldviews. And I'll give you a couple examples. One is that the United Nations recognizes witchcraft as a crime because they know that if they don't have that crime on the books for the refugee camps that they administer, then mob justice will break out. So it's a very sort of like practical minded accommodation of a supernatural belief. And I think we ought to have licensing systems in place for psychics and mediums and ghost hunters so that those folks can do the things that they do in a way that's not damaging to society. And I think once you do those sorts of things, then you're creating a leadership within the community that has a stake in society. They become stakeholders instead of sort of natural underminers. And I think that if institutions can do that, maybe we will get ahead to the next phase of our country in a way that's a little more harmonious.
Last time we talked, it was in 2023 when your previous book was coming out, If It Sounds Like a Quack. And in a way, you return to the subject in this book, and this decline in scientific literacy, these beliefs that many people hold that aren't connected to proven scientific fact. Are there more stories left to tell in this realm? Will this subject continue to fascinate you beyond this book?
Yeah, I think absolutely. There are folks out there who are sort of on the fringes of society, who are outsiders. They don't feel at home with our current system and our country. And I think understanding those folks is always going to be a passion of mine. And I think it's always going to be important for us because when we're only talking to the people inside the tent, we don't necessarily notice when our tent is shrinking and when there's another tent about to pop up next door. And so I'm always sort of looking for those seeds. My first book, A Libertarian Walks Into a Bear, was also sort of about this idea of institutional distrust and these folks on the outside who are trying to change the system in a way that better reflected their ideals. So I just think it's an endlessly interesting dynamic that is not only sort of important to report on, but fun to report on, because these are really great, interesting, sometimes bizarre people to talk to. There's one gentleman that I spoke to. He believes that he's been reincarnated, and that his former life was a obscure New England writer that we have documentation of.
Hmm.
And he went in search for his former self's wife, the spirit of his former self's wife.
Wow.
And he connected with her through a medium and is in a sort of ongoing and totally committed relationship with her. And so I thought this is just so interesting that this man is sort of, when I tell him I think it's so odd, he says, well, lots of people sort of stay true to their loved ones after they depart. And this is no different than that. But I just thought that this was such an interesting place to be in life, that you sort of dug up the spirit of someone of a former life that you lived 200 years ago, and are sort of rekindling that lost passion.
That was Matthew Hongoltz Hetling. His new book is called The Ghost Lab: How Bigfoot Hunters, Mediums, and Alien Enthusiasts Are Wrecking Science. It hit bookshelves in May. We have to take one more quick break. When we come back, we'll hear from another local author who's penned a new young adult novel full of travel, family drama, and young love. It's a great summer read, and you can hear more about it in just a minute on Vermont Edition. Welcome back to Vermont Edition. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Kat Baker is headed into her freshman year of high school, and she wants to be a track star. But things take a turn when she finds out she'll be spending the summer exploring her roots in a rustic Greek village. When she's there, she meets a swoon-worthy but completely off-limits Greek boy. That's the enticing premise of a new young adult book by Vermont author Mima Tipper. It came out in May. Mima also does presentations on literacy and fiction writing at local libraries and schools. She splits her time between South Hero and Waitsfield. We spoke on Zoom recently, and our conversation began with her telling me about her recent experiences as a first-time author.
It's been a fun learning process, and everything's like a learning curve. It's like, oh, haven't done that before. Oh, so that's fun.
What kind of things feel new?
I think all the interviewing is very new for me, and being on podcasts and having people asking questions, and some of them are expected questions, and some of them are like, oh, that's an interesting angle. I hadn't thought of that, so that's interesting. It just gets me thinking about new things about the work and the book, and just being an author in general. Just being an author is new. I mean, being a writer is not new. I've been doing that for a long time, but being an author is very different. It's like sort of writing is with the door closed for me, and this author thing is with the door very open. So that's, completely different.
So the roots of this book, Cat's Greek Summer, go back to your time getting your MFA at the Vermont College of Fine Arts. I remember reading somewhere that you had an advisor who kind of urged you to write something that felt close to personal experience. Is that right?
It is true. So after my first semester, I went into the MFA with a full draft of a fantasy novel. I'm a huge fantasy nerd. I love fantasy books. I always have, and I really wanted to write this is my dark fairy urban fantasy opus, start of a trilogy kind of thing. And I took that in, and I worked with Uma Krishnaswamy, who's a wonderful author and teacher and mentor. And she said, this is all great, and you can continue to work on this. But she just said, I wonder if you would consider ever writing something more personal. And that just, at first I was a little like, oh. And then I started thinking about what she said, and I was like, oh, well, I could write a story that was based on my own memories. I'm half Greek, so I could write a story based on my own childhood going to Greece in the summer with my Greek mom and my brother, and how that was. And once I got started doing that, it just kind of like whoosh came out in a big flood. So I wanted to make her as the character just as opposite me at that age as possible, and have her be very different from me and have very different experiences, but yet draw from this personal wealth of experience and information and family and knowledge. And that's what turned into the book.
So Kat is your main character. Kat is a big runner. Were you a runner?
I do have a lot of experience running personally, and then with the high school piece, when my own kids were going to high school, there was sort of knowledge of like, oh well, if you go into high school like with an idea, with a sport or with a club you want to join, that's a great way to break into high school. And so my oldest son did cross country. He did the preseason. So I immediately thought, oh, well, this is an opportunity for somebody who has this big plan that she wants to enact, and that she can be running with this team all summer. So there was sort of a conflation of my own running experience as well as the high school angst of that transition, and what kind of opportunities are there for kids to get into something a little before school starts.
So as you're hinting at, she has this plan for herself ahead of high school to attend preseason and to practice running all summer, and then to use that to kind of fuel her ascendancy in high school. But those plans do not work out. The adults in her life have a different plan for her summer, and she heads to this small village in Greece with her family. Can you tell us a little bit about this village where she ends up and how it mirrors the place where you spent your summers as a kid?
It is as close to a replica as I could possibly imagine of where we spent summers in Greece when I was growing up. I mean, just every physical aspect of it is completely, from the cottage to the beach road to the jetty to the docks to the village, the taverna, the mountain road coming over the mountain. I just completely went crazy going through all my memories and reliving and talking to my mom and my family about their memories too, and bringing that in to create this spot. That's really what it was like. There was no electricity. There was one phone I have the Wi-Fi being in the village, but there was only one phone in the entire village. It was in the village in a kiosk where you could buy chocolate and cream and things like that. And I just wanted my character to really be out of her realm, where she's completely immersed in this culture and is not sort of always trying to figure out how to get out of it.
Yeah.
Electronically or digitally. So
you write in this book about first love or first romance, which can be such an exciting but also overwhelming feeling for a teenager, especially a young teenager like Kat. I'm wondering if you feel comfortable sharing any memories that you have about the first time that you fell in love that kind of helped you create these intense emotions that I think sometimes as adults, we can start to feel distance from, that like deep, overwhelming, all-consuming feeling when you have a crush or fall in love for the first time in high school. It's very different from the kind of love that you often feel as an adult.
When I was growing up, it was just juvenile fiction. So I was reading, when I was in 7th grade, I was reading books like Go Ask Alice, I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. I mean, there was no differentiation really between a lot of fiction. And so this age group, for that, like 14-year-old characters. I mean, you got middle grade where you're sort of up to 12-year-olds, and then you have YA, which often pushes older 16, 17-year-old characters. So this age group, I just was very drawn to that time between like 8th and 9th grade where, there's still a lot of childhood and attachment to family and being under the wing of family, but you are ready to start to spread your wings a little bit. And I just remember it so distinctly being in 9th grade where you just develop these incredible crushes on people that were sometimes not even real. It would be maybe even to a movie star or a singer or something, and you'd have pictures of them in your room, and you would just dream about meeting them and what you would say and do. And that seemed very, in retrospect, that seemed very safe because there's probably very little chance you would actually encounter such a person. So it was easy to pour a lot of feeling and emotion into these crushes on a picture of somebody or somebody that you didn't actually know. And then the feeling of actually meeting somebody, a person that inspired the same kind of feelings, that was just right there, that you could actually have a conversation with or a relationship with, I found very overwhelming. And even in some ways kind of like, I push pull. I want to talk to that person, but no, I don't really want to talk to that person. And I just kind of remember that so strongly. Or I want to be attracted to somebody, but not really, because if they're paying attention to me, that's scary. Then I have to do something. I don't know what. I have to be a certain way. And I just really like that feeling of transition. I think kind of encapsulates a lot of what a person at that age, that young age, is feeling, where you want to get out of the nest of home, but it's also really comfy in the nest at home, and it's nice to feel taken care of. So, and I remember it really well for myself, of having crushes on boys at that age, and actually having, moving toward like the first actual physical encounters, and just being kind of a little petrified, like going to your first dance and slow dancing that first time. And it's like, oh, I want him to put his arms around me, but not really. I'm not sure.
It's like the thing you want to do most is talk to your friends afterwards about what happened, but not actually experience the thing that could be happening.
Yeah. Or that you really like this boy, and you're talking to your friends about how much you like the boy, and then someone says, "Oh, that boy actually likes you," and it's like, what?
Like, what?
Oh my God. Expectations. Now there's like a bridge between us that could be crossed. So I don't know. I just thought it was fun to really try to put myself back in that time, and of course, when I was writing this book, I had my own kids to sort of plumb their lives and be a little bit of a poacher on some of their lives. So
Have your kids read the book?
They have. They all read the book. After my mom passed away, I just was at a time where I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do with the manuscript, and I just thought, I just would really like my kids to read it. That's really all I really want. I want them to read it and to experience this time in my, a version of this time in my life. And I thought that the grandmother character, the Yaya character, and the mom character, well, especially the Yaya character, I just thought they would really get a kick out of reading about that and experiencing that, because they really missed their own grandmother. So, yeah.
I also hear that you're working on a paranormal young adult novel now. Does this take you back to your fantasy roots?
Well, somewhat. It's I'm going to be a little secretive about it, because I don't want to take attention off of Kat yet. But I do have another book. It's coming out in June of 2026, and it is I will say it's a YA, so the characters are more traditionally YA. They're 17, they're high school seniors, and it's set kind of in the world of high school theater. And there is a paranormal element to it. So yeah, that was just really fun. That was a really fun book to write. And it's just one of those kind of stories where it's like, what if this could happen, and then make it happen. And I am a huge fantasy nerd. I really just adore fantasies, and I try to limit myself with series, because there's so many pages. Like, I like this series, but it's like 2,000 pages with five books, and I just, oh my gosh, do I really want to devote my entire summer to one series? But I'm a big Holly Black fan. I love Cassandra Clare, and even as a kid, I mean, Greek myths. Valera's Book of Greek Myths is my all-time favorite book. So I lived in that book as a child. I just wanted to be in those stories and be in the pictures.
Mima Tipper, the author of the young adult novel Cat's Greek Summer. Thank you so much for talking with me. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, thank you, Michaela. I've enjoyed it and really appreciate the opportunity. And thanks so much.
And if you want to see Mima speak about her book in person, you can catch her at the Worthen Library in South Hero on June 25th, where she'll be giving a book talk. All right, that is it for today. John Ahrens is Vermont Edition's managing producer. Andrea Lorian and Daniela Fierro are our producers, and our intern is Callie Canuxerl. Our theme music is by Myra Flynn. I'm Michaela Lafrac. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll catch up again soon.